This is Stack's Chats with David, and we were planning on doing this weekly. And then I ended up, after 3 months on the sofa, needing some sunshine, so I went to Colombia. And when you're in Colombia, you tend to get into a bit of a muddle if you're there for a few weeks. And as you know, after a couple of days, sitting on a table which collapsed, and getting an injury, we still actually managed to have a rip when I was in Colombia, I think the second week, but we didn't record it. And then since getting back, things have been pretty wild here. I picked up some bug on the plane. Still went to see the UFC live, which was insane, with a pretty heavy bug. But then just getting over that. So we're planning on doing this weekly. I think we just should, this being the third week, come to the conclusion of our how we met story, how we hung out at event story, how Bitcoin intertwines with everything and anything we do story, and bring it up to date. I think the last week 2, we got up to, I'm doing this chronologically by events because it kind of tends to be easier to kind of manage a flow like that. We spoke about Oslo, and Danny's here with us now in London. We just had a great conversation with him. I look forward to reading your book, Danny. We met up with Danny in Oslo, Prague, I believe we mentioned, Nashville we went to after that. And how was that for you? How was Nashville for you? Is that a good place to start?
Yeah, it was. I had a great time in Nashville. It was my first time in Tennessee. I like Tennessee. The conference, however, was so enormous. And there was a lot of people, that were from the crypto crowd that I don't necessarily totally resonate with, but, that is Bitcoin. There's a lot of people within crypto that have Bitcoin, but there's a lot of people within Bitcoin that don't have crypto. So the vibe was a little bit different than it was at the Halving Party or Pacific Bitcoin or Madeira, where it was, predominantly Bitcoin maxis. But I did have a good time. It was an interesting week too. I can't remember what Trump got shot at just recently. David Bailey apparently doxed Elon, and then Elon fucking suspended his Twitter account. Swan laid off a bunch of people. There was an intense energy in the air. Then Trump's giving his speech, and they had the security guards. It was a very intense vibe. And there was a ton of people that I wanted to see that I didn't even cross paths with over the few days that I was there. But I had a good time. We met Kenny Florian. That was a lot of fun. I met a few people that I hadn't crossed paths with before. My wife and I had been talking about moving to Tennessee, so I think we were there for 10 days. We got to drive all around Nashville and kind of soak the area up and get a feeling for what it would be like to be there. We've now since then decided that that's not going to be where we're going to move at this point, but yeah, it was good. It was good. I would say, though, the conference itself, though, was one of my least favorites, even though I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the other ones more, and I think that was just due to the magnitude of the conference and, some of the differing opinions around the future of Bitcoin and cryptos and the whole thing.
It seemed to be elevated.
It was a lot of fun.
It seemed to be a lot of the speakers were more on the kind of professional business level, venture capitalist. There tended to be a lot more suits and ties there, sat talking. That's why it was a breath of fresh air to meet and then hang out with Kenny Florian, who spoke, I think, at the end it was right after Trump spoke. I was with him, sat next to him watching Trump speak, which was pretty wild. And that was funny. It's the guy is quite a pretty good comedian. And it's interesting to see how now, where are we? 9 months into the future, a lot of what he said, we kind of chuffed at, laughed at, never going to do that, has actually kind of come true. And the Lomis thing, I was with Kenny when we saw Preston Pish before Trump went up there, and we were told that he's going to announce a strategic Bitcoin reserve, buying 1 million coins. Robert Kennedy's talking about buying 5 million coins. And we're basically quasi celebrating, thinking that our bags are going to be pumped that weekend.
Yeah.
Kenny's got 600K this weekend. We're going, really? There was a lot of craziness like that. But yeah, there's the psychedelics panel was really good. You did that with Source Node, with Max and the other guys. That was really good. But yeah, in general, there's quite a lot of. And BitBoy, I saw him outside with like cameras around him, and I went up there, tried to like get involved, and I got shooed away quite quickly because I was like frowning at his girlfriend. Looked at me like I was some psychopath because I'm like, I don't know what I said, but it wasn't very pleasant, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was quite a pretty interesting place. But yeah, I think
Wasn't
we
he
had
wearing
fun.
fat gold chains?
Yes,
Yeah, or
yes,
like
of
fucking
course.
big, like silver, platinum, diamond chains or something? Oh
As you
man,
would say, as fiat as fuck. But he's as
fiat
crypto as
as fuck,
fuck.
dude. Yeah, dude. He's an interesting one. You know, when I first started making videos, actually, it was painful. It was hard for me to do. I'm thinking, oh fuck, like, you know, it's hard to put yourself out there. It's a vulnerable thing. But I would think about BitBoy from time to time. I'd be like, if this fucking idiot can fucking get in front of the camera and talk all this fucking nonsense, dude, anybody could do it.
Man, I think he's
Oh
back in
man.
jail now. I think he's in jail at the moment.
Is
Good.
he?
I'm
Gosh,
glad.
dude, the memes are so good. It's like crypto, and then some, I don't know who it is, like Michael Saylor or some shit. And he got BitBoy in his fucking mugshot, dude. It's so funny, dude. Gosh, yeah, that's crypto, dude. You know,
Yeah,
Bitcoin. One of the things I just love about Bitcoin is it's like it really exposes idiots, dude. It exposes dishonest people, dude. It really does. And like some profound way, like. Yeah, it seems to be a mirror, and it like amplifies whatever you got going on. If you're an idiot, it exposes that dumminess at a high level, and then if you have good intentions and signal, it seems to like amplify that. You know, it's yeah. So, anyways,
yeah,
enough
man.
about BitBoy, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Gosh.
What else did we do? Well, no, so I haven't seen you physically. So we hung out with Lacey and Evie, obviously in Nashville. Well, I haven't physically seen you since Nashville. You know, after
Yeah,
Nashville,
you were gonna come to El Salvador for the conference down there,
that's right.
adopting
That's
in
right.
November. You didn't make it.
Then, but I did Riga. That was okay. Went to Amsterdam for the BTC Amsterdam. 5,000 people, which is kind of bigger than you'd think for a European conference. Quite a lot of people there.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was kind of something that it was almost a repeat of Nashville. I guess the only good thing that happened for us, for Michael, our producer, who created the Ode to Nodes video, a 4-minute kind of love letter to node runners with a music track and Toma's voice and your voice and like in and out of AI, real life and in and out of AI. It's a beautiful piece. I'm very, very proud of the work Michael did to create it. And then we posted it on the Node Runners channel. One of the Node Runners is a co-organizer for Amsterdam, Sebastian, and he hit us up saying, "Guys, your video is amazing. I'd love to play it at the event." So we were pretty excited about that. I think they played it 4 or 5 times. I got a Telegram message just before they went to play it, and I missed every single one. So I never actually saw it myself visually at the conference, but that was quite a joy. So that was the kind of highlight of Amsterdam. Again, it was pretty much a repeat of Nashville in terms of speakers and content. And we don't tend to go to listen to the content anyway. We go and hang out with the people, but it's good to get quite a few of the crew we've met along the years back together. So we had that in Amsterdam, but then planned to come to El Salvador, but for I think price reasons and for I think is it November? Oh, yeah, energy wise, I think my energy was a bit low. You and I,
Yeah.
we've kind of maxed out a lot of social events, maybe 10 throughout the year. And you get to a point where like, I think I've done it. And having been to El Salvador in March, having such an amazing time there, I think there wasn't the need for me to repeat. But you were thinking about moving there at the time. So Nashville was a maybe from Humboldt. Nashville was a maybe. And El Salvador was an option, which is kind of what was it, why you went back the second or third time?
Yeah, so I was there for the halving party. Well, let's go back a little bit. So like 3 years ago, basically 3.5 years ago, I had finished a large farm management consulting job. And when that ended, it was my wife and I have been talking about, all right, like we need to move out of Humboldt. I think it's our time. Like our time has come. And then I was propositioned to run this greenhouse facility that I ran for the last, I don't know, 2.5 years. And I hemmed and hawed for like 2 months while I had the opportunity to make the decision And I decided to do that deal because it's near my house. The place is directly across the street from the farm that I owned and ultimately sold. And the Bitcoin price was so cheap. I'm like, dang, Bitcoin is like fucking on sale. Like, I got to do this job. And so that kept us here for a lot longer than what we initially wanted. Um, and so over the years, we've been talking about like the places that we could move, and Tennessee was on the list. And then so Tennessee, that kind of shifted to then Austin, Texas. And being in El Salvador for the halving party, we had a great time. We met a lot of people there. And then I got invited to do a workshop and be a part of Michael Ruiz and Jordan Erb's Sovereignty Studios. They did like a Build in El Salvador Kickstart retreat where like people came down and they stayed at the Bitcoin Mansion, which is beautiful property. So they invited me to go and be a part of that, and we did twice actually. So I was there, I think it was in August, then I went back again in November. And in August, we, met more people down there, and like, the energy is really fucking good amongst the people that have been relocating there. They're very entrepreneurial, outside of the box thinkers. They're building things, doing things, and it's alluring, and like they're, of course they're like, hey, everybody should come move here, and it's so amazing. And there's a lot of great things about what's happening there. And so my wife was more fond of the idea about living in El Salvador than I was, but I was open to it. I was like, all right, let's go and check this out. So we went in November, and I think we initially planned on staying for 6 weeks. We ended up staying for 5. We cut it a little bit short. The challenge was when we got there, and it was like immediate, because the other few times that I had been there last year, there's activities, there's a conference, there's a workshop, there's stuff happening. So it's like, it's just high energy, and you're moving around, socializing, doing things or whatever. And so we got there 4 weeks, 5 weeks before the conference. And so then we had to go like grocery shopping, and like I needed to buy a cast iron pan and a wooden cutting board and some basic stuff so that we could live. Like, all right, let's see how this is. Dude, it's so hard to get supplies and the things that we're accustomed to that like immediately I'm like, we can't fucking do this. Like, the first mover advantage to being in a place like that, an up and coming area, doesn't apply to us. This is what I'm like, working out with my wife. Like, we're not selling Bitcoin to buy real estate in El Salvador. So like, what are we gaining from dealing with the challenges around being in El Salvador? And don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful place, and the trajectory of the country is fantastic. I think what Bukele has done is miraculous in a lot of ways. Some of it is controversial, whatever. He's definitely turned the country around. But like, I will say, I'm accustomed to like shopping on my iPhone at 8 p.m. at night and swiping on Amazon and having something show up at my door 48 hours later. And like, you don't fucking have that there. And like, I'm going to the grocery stores, and like, oh my gosh, it's not easy to get the things that, we like. And so, yeah, we decided not to do that. And I remember coming back in the middle of November. I got off the plane here in Humboldt County, and there's a grocery store, Eureka Natural Foods. It's like a Whole Foods, but honestly, it's like better. There's nothing in the store that's not organic. And dude, it was like an emotional experience. When we were walking into the store, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is the land of abundance. I can't even fucking believe it, dude. And so, yeah, we decided El Salvador is not for us currently, And then Trump won the election while we were down there. The Bitcoin price starts pumping, and then that kind of changed the dynamic a little bit. Not that I'm like some super hardcore Trump fan, but it does seem that Trump is more nationalistic, and Kamala was much more globalistic. And so a lot of the chaos that was ensuing, the pendulum seems to have swung the opposite direction. Now, I'm not, I'm very skeptical about what's taking place. But it does, I mean, I could say like, the fact that, RFK Jr. is talking about taking the fluoride out of the water, and we should look into the vaccine. I mean, we could go down all the list of all the things that are being discussed within the current regime. And it's honestly, it's pretty miraculous. And so that kind of changed the vibe a little bit too. And one of the things that's been very important, within our decisions, about our decision to move is I want to make sure I'm running towards something, not from something. And we have oscillated back and forth from like having this feeling of like, oh, we got to escape. We need to go somewhere else. And like that, I don't think that that's a good energy to act upon. So yeah, we changed the plan there, and we actually met Paul Tarantino. He's the CEO of Buy Federal. I think they do Bitcoin exchanges or Bitcoin ATMs. And Michelle Weekly. They were in El Salvador. I can't remember if Michelle was there. I'm fucking sure she was. She was at a lot of the other conferences we were at last year. They were talking about Sarasota because they live in the Sarasota area, and my wife has family in St. Pete. So, we got home in, middle of November, and we started doing a bunch of research on Florida, and I'm like, fucking Florida sounds awesome. Trucks, guns, gators, weed. Like, it was fucking cool. No state income taxes. So we started talking about Florida, and I think that's what our plan is now. We're going to be moving to Florida is what it looks like.
It's interesting because in Bitcoin circles, you talk, especially at conferences, there's a lot of conversations and people there that help you get additional passports. And it was one of the things that interested me in the space, that I'd go and find, oh, okay, you can get a passport for this country, that corner. And then you, like you said about the running away from something to running to something, over the course of the last 2-3 years, you feel like you might need a plan B, which is like there's a company called Plan B Passports. But then there is an element of what am I running away from? And especially in London and England at the moment, we've got a socialist government. It's getting worse. The government's getting bigger. But it's only bad if you kind of get involved in it, if you research it and you spend your time reading newspapers and watching political shows and watching political channels, and there's nothing you can do about it. But there's on the streets, the incremental change the fiat land and world has given us in England since for over 110 years since we came off the gold standard. It's the pace in which the degradation is occurring is really, really slowly. And as opposed to in other countries where you've got hyperinflation here, there, and everywhere, and we expect as Bitcoins that could well happen, like the mandibles 2029 to 2035 talk about how hyperinflation in America and just in England, and I think in the US, the rate of inflation is it's slow, and I think it will continue to be slow. Parker Lewis talks about gradually then suddenly, and we're all expecting a gradually then suddenly moment where hyperinflation occurs, Bitcoin goes to 10 million, and that can happen any day now. It could be next month, it could be 5 years, it could be 100 years. But living in England and living in London, it's somewhere that I think there's a really famous quote: if you get tired of London, you get tired of life. I can't remember whose quote it is, but it's somewhere you kind of want to escape from, but it's always draws you in. So we've, as a family, have considered different passport for different places. Number one, I don't want to use my Bitcoin paying 300 grand for a passport for St. Kitts, and then as a little island in the middle of nowhere. What do I want to be there for? And you and I spoke about and considered, and you've considered it much more seriously than I have, El Salvador, and it's maybe not the right time now. But have you considered getting additional passports? Talking about additional passports, you're going from West Coast US to Southeast Coast is Florida, Southeast Coast Florida, and like the Miami area and there's Key West. I've been watching videos about Key West. I think my family are going to travel around there this year to check that out. Looks amazing. Not that we can easily move somewhere to the US unless my daughter gets like a study visa where we can live in the US for 6 months. But if you had to get a passport, there's nothing really appealing. Like Madeira was a potential option, but it's pretty boring. There's a lot of old people there. There's a lot of places that accept Bitcoin as currency, which is what I think Bitcoin is money, and I want to use it as money. And it's a growing community of shops and bars and restaurants accepting Bitcoin as currency in Madeira. As an island, it's a lovely island, but would you permanently base yourself there? Maybe not. So you're thinking California to Florida. Has there been any other countries you'd consider, and in terms of to the level of wanting to get a passport for them and wanting to spend Bitcoin to get a passport for them? I assume not, because we haven't even spoken about it.
Well, I definitely wouldn't spend Bitcoin to get a passport, at least under the current,
Not now.
I don't know, macro conditions or whatever. But we were talking about having another child and having that child born in El Salvador, and also El Salvador. I think if you're there, you can get residency. I think it's 4 or 5 years, and then you can get your citizenship and get a passport. But the thing for me is even if I had citizenship in El Salvador, but I maintained citizenship in the United States, I still am beholden to the United States. I still have to pay taxes to the United States. And so unless I expatriate,
Mm.
I still am subject to all, basically whatever the United States tax laws and all that stuff would apply to me still. So giving that up, I don't see any need for that now. Now I do think that, what is it, like the nomad capitalist, like there's definitely jurisdictional arbitrage that could take place, tax advantages. And, I haven't gotten too deep into that rabbit hole. I think that, people who are leveraging some of those opportunities are doing really well, and that makes a lot of sense. But the big sticking point for me is like, okay, so if I move to El Salvador to get citizenship, am I going to expatriate? Like, I don't know. Like, the United States has its problems for sure, and in some sense, it's like leading the way globally through this like fiat mess that's taking place. But in a lot of ways, like it is the economic and it's the leader in the world in a lot of areas, right? And so to give that up, I don't think that would be responsible. There's a lot of people all over the world that would love to be citizens of the United States. And so that was kind of the sticking point for us, is like,
Yeah.
what's the benefit for me to get citizenship in another country if I still have to pay taxes in the United States? Like, and I have family here. I grew up here. And there's part of me too that thinks like, why would I want to escape something if I can, even if it's infinitesimal, but if I can put my effort into like making this better here, like, the United States is the leader in a lot of things globally. And so then obviously the shift with with Trump, and now, Trump could be the right hand of the same entity that's pulling the strings and fucking the world up, right? I don't know. It's like, I've talked with some people that are like, look, the left, they took away a certain set of freedoms, and the people who support the left were in support of that. And now you have the right taking away a different set of freedoms, and the people that support the right are in support of that. And so even if that's true, and even if, let's say Trump and the whole thing that's taking place is diabolical and as fucked as it ever could be, I still think that because of Bitcoin and the integration of Bitcoin, the Trojan horse has made it through the gates. Like, I think that there's a lot of potentially good things that are going to, change as a result of that. And so that, it goes back to like, I want to be running towards something, not from something. And I
Yeah.
don't see that it's better. One of the things that I chatted with a few people about in November that are down in El Salvador is like, I kind of realized, like, wait a second, I don't have more freedom here in El Salvador than I do in the States. Like, just because I can transact in Bitcoin without capital gains, like, doesn't mean that they're like, so, okay, that's a perk. But
Mm.
like, you can own guns, but it's, there's like a process, and, you don't have cannabis. You don't, like, there's a lot of things there where it's like, hold on, I actually have more freedoms and a better life in the States than I do in El Salvador. Yeah. So that's kind of my thought process around that.
But yeah, given that a second child could be imminent, is there not an opportunity for you to get the family a passport in another country with a child being born in El Salvador still? Or,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
I don't know what
didn't
the
get,
rules are. There could be
I
some.
do think that it's my general understanding. I could be wrong about this, but if the child's born there, the child gets citizenship, the mother gets citizenship, and then I would prove that I'm the legal father and the husband, and then I would in turn get citizenship. But, once again, like, living down there to do that, when I, like, for what? Like, why would I
Yeah.
do that? To hedge myself against some sort of totalitarian, like, globalist lockdown? They shut down the border. Like, I don't know. And if that's the case, you know what? I'd rather be around all my guns, my freeze dried food, my gas masks. Like, I don't know. I got supplies. Like, I'm not a crazy prepper, but at the same time, like, there's been a lot of chaos taking place in the world. And so I've kind of prepared myself for the potential worst, and so I honestly, like, I think I'd rather be in the States,
Yeah. It's
if
like,
there was like a third world war and, like, it's all fucked and everything's just the worst it could be. I don't know that there's a better place to be. Actually, I think the
yeah.
best place, and this is what I talk about with my wife, I think one of the safest places that I ever could be is where I currently live. It's 4 hours away from San Francisco, it's a windy, crazy road with multiple bridges. Like if we had an apocalyptic fallout, like there are some pretty savage people living in the hills of Mendocino County, Humboldt County, that'll just blow bridges and shit. Like we're landlocked. It's 4 hours to get from where I'm at to Redding or to go north to Oregon. So yeah, like I feel like in a true societal meltdown, like I'm in a really good spot, and I don't know that it would be better in El Salvador. So it's kind of like,
It's like it's been a bit. It's like almost a Wizard of Oz story where you and I have basically followed the Bitcoin brick road all over the world, been to so many different countries, met so many different people, but there's no place like home.
yeah,
I'm like,
I
we're
know,
okay in London. I'm okay in London, and
yeah,
you're like, I'm okay in Florida, or in the US, but in
yeah.
Florida, it's interesting. Yeah, but you
You
have
know,
to
and I
go.
also go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I stopped putting energy into to having fear-based thoughts. You know, like I mean, it's logical. You could say you could. What is it? So Jim Carrey did a graduation speech at Harvard, like, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago. It's like a 20-minute speech. It's just epic. And one of the things that he said that I just love so much is he goes, a lot of people make decisions out of fear disguised as practicality. So like you could look at the world through a practical lens, through logic and reason, and think like things are going to get really, really bad. And maybe they do. I don't know. But you know what? Like it doesn't feel good. And if you think about the law of attraction, and quantum physics, and like the idea that your vibrational frequency is affecting the world around you, like I've really made a conscious effort into starting to think like, what do I want? Let me put energy into that. Where attention goes, energy flows. So I've really over the last many years of my life, like kind of programmed myself to stop thinking about like these fucked potential outcomes and start thinking about like how if I was a creator of my own reality, and let's say we're living in the multiverse, and everything that ever has happened, could happen, will happen, is all existing within the field at the exact same time, like how about like let me resonate with the outcome that I want. I think about like there's a few Bitcoiners that I absolutely love that over the years I've been listening to have talked about things like key extraction camps. Like we're going to get locked up in a digital panopticon, and they're going to come after us. They're going to 6102 us, and they're going to fucking waterboard us till we give up our private keys. And like, maybe, right? Maybe, but I don't want to
Unlikely.
manifest that for myself. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, so I stopped thinking about that stuff. Now I'm thinking, okay, well, the world is capitulating into the Bitcoin incentive vortex. The
Yeah.
fact, like going back to Tennessee, Trump announces the Bitcoin strategic reserve, the quote unquote stockpile. Well, motherfucker, he signed it into effect. There's an executive order. Holy shit. Like when that happened, I'm like, really? Like, fuck, dude. Like that's so things are moving in the right direction. And I just am and maybe I'm just fucked in the head and totally delusional. I don't know, but it feels better to like think about the timeline that you want to create for yourself. And I think that the demonic, diabolical powers that have been influencing the world have done a very effective job driving people into a low vibrational state of fear, and everyone's fucked up over things that may or may not happen. And I think that when you're scared, you're actually attracting more things to be scared of. You've talked about this in London. Like if you walk around in some of these sketchy parts in London or LA or San Francisco or a lot of places in the world today, and there's people who will do bad things to you, they can tell if you're fucking scared. And I think that that's like a really easy to understand example of like, you're going to attract whatever you're resonating with. And so, like I think that prudence and being responsible and hedging yourself against, uncertainty and fuck things that could happen is makes sense. But at the same time, like, you need to navigate through life. At least I believe that it's better strategies to navigate through life, assuming that the good things that you want out of life are going to manifest. And if you truly believe that, I believe that if you can unlock a true deep-seated belief that good things are going to happen to you, then they do. And it's like it creates this feedback loop. And I like Bitcoin is a phenomenal catalyst to like become a more conscious creator and like be more aware, because it's very empowering. I mean, it's like economic immortality, right? Like it's this total fucking insulation against, perpetration, coercion, violence, confiscation. It's, like all those things. So it's very empowering, and it also makes it really easy from a logical perspective to be like, hey, hold on, like good things are going to happen. I'm insulated so effectively from bad things, like I can actually much more effectively focus on the good things. And like,
Yeah.
and it's not delusional. It's not like, oh, hey, because I mean, I wouldn't even say that, maybe not delusional, but there's something more harder to grok about the idea of like, hey, I'm going to live this life. I'm going to do the right thing no matter what, because I'm going to go to heaven as opposed to hell. Well, like that's cool, but it's more down the road and ethereal and abstract. And maybe it doesn't happen. Maybe it does happen. But when you have this thing that's like real and tangible and right here, it's really empowering. Yeah. So I mean, I
And
just focus on the positive stuff that you
but
want.
we've got the Eric Stacks BB world, the before Bitcoin world, and if we place ourselves in that world, and we understand the kind of struggles that we went through and the time and focus and effort we put into just getting by, earning money day to day, getting by, trying to succeed, trying to thrive in that fiat world, and then to the what's the after Bitcoin term? It's BB world.
AB,
It's just
AB.
AB. So the AB, now we're in the AB world, and we've we've put a huge amount of proof of work into understand Bitcoin. Then we get to the point of, and I love the conversation you had with Gigi on podcasts. You've recently come back to doing podcasts after some time out, and you had an amazing conversation about how, and what you do with yourself now. We've both got ourselves in this position. Well, now what do we do with ourselves? We're not rich. We're okay. We can, we have to be cautious with our funds and our spend. We're not wealthy people, but we've got this thing that gives us the confidence and the stability and the baseline to be able to think about whatever we want, which we couldn't do before in the BB world, because we always like trying to come up with, the focus and the effort and the time we spent in that world doesn't get you anywhere. They call it the rat race and the hamster wheel, but it really is that. When you're in it, you can't believe you're in the rat race or on a hamster wheel. But Bitcoin shines a really bright light on that hamster wheel and the other people that are still in it when you've been in it and are now not in it. So it's more about what I wanted to talk a little bit with you about. Is kind of what we do with our time now. And that was the conversation you had with Gigi. It's quite profound, because I asked this question to a number of people, no coiners, new coiners, shitcoiners. What would you do with your time if you didn't have to work for money? And a lot of my really good friends, number one, they all say something totally different to what they're doing today. If they're working for money, they all say something totally different. And number two is it's mainly creative. Humans tend to want to do something creative when they don't have to work for money, don't have to drink coffee and just get on this like productive mechanical cycle. We want to do something a bit more creative. Like my friend Ben I'd love to do pottery, and he's like a sales guy for a marketing company. And it's like, I'm like, well, mate, just do that then. But
Yeah.
in fiat mindset, you don't think you can. But I'm not particularly creative. You got any creative outlets? Painting,
I mean,
art, or painting, or drawing, or singing, or instruments, or some of our Bitcoiner
yeah,
friends have,
I've always made things growing up. Like, I don't know. I used to ride bikes. I'd build custom BMX bikes, like, and then growing cannabis for the
right.
last 16 years of my life. Like I've been building grow rooms and setting up these, 1 acre. I did like, an acre facility and like, with multiple greenhouses, redid the land. We punched in a new road, graded
But
some new flats.
would you do that if you didn't have to do it for money?
I think I would have. That was definitely part of it was my purpose in my life at that time. And
Nice.
so now what I'm finding that makes I don't know, fills me up the most or I get the most excited about is stuff like this, talking with other people who are like working out this change, this paradigm shift, what it means for them. Growing up, my dad used to tell me at times, he's like, Eric, you talk too much. And I'm like, well, fucking maybe I talk just enough, Dad. I don't know. I like talking, right? And so, yeah, I like talking with people and connecting with other people and, kind of trying to figure out like, what is this? What are we all doing here? Like, what is this life about? Like, how can we find more meaning? How can we find more enjoyment and joy? In the conversation I had with Gigi, and this is something that I've talked a little bit about with you from time to time, and I've been really working out is like, I kind of don't know how to operate. And now that I'm coming out of this time, I mean, and for many, many years of my life, I mean, I could say from the time I was like, I don't know, basically a teenager, I've been operating from like a cortisol induced, stressed, fear state. And as I've been like transmuting that and coming out of that, and like, I quit drinking coffee 6 months ago. Like I kind of almost like don't know how to operate without leveraging stress and fear and cortisol to get things done. So I'm like, I don't know, getting more balanced and healthy and whatever. Um, yeah, it's definitely interesting. For me, I like connecting with other people who are like kind of, I don't know, maybe ascending to a higher state of consciousness or becoming more consciously aware of the fact that they have more control of their reality than they do, or at least generally think, or seemingly so. I don't know, and I'm just obviously like so many other Bitcoiners, just like absolutely enthralled and blown away by, the changes that this technology or discovery is gonna be a catalyst for. And so
Mm.
kind of exploring that has like become my passion. I will say another thing that's really helped me in I don't know, just transmuting the fear, the pain, the anguish, that cortisol, that stress is like developing an understanding or at least a perspective that for me makes sense, that I resonate with. Like the reason the world is so fucked today is because we didn't have a technological solution to like the shortcomings, based upon the physicality of property. So where you got physicality of like gold, where gold is physical, it lacks in its portability. Now you have to have a derivative system, a paper system, a certificate system to scale that as an economic tool. But that's corruptible, it's co-optable, and then you have this incentive to violence based upon the physicality of property. So who runs the world? The people who are the best at being coercive and violent and doing bad things. And so if you look, I think like simulation theory in some sense too. It's like when Satoshi wrote the white paper and released Bitcoin into cyberspace, it's like he fundamentally changed how the simulation operates. And like we've merged the physical world with the metaphysical world, or at least the digital world. And now that you have the ability to store your economic energy in this invisible, metaphysical, inviolable, unconfiscatable property, like that incentive to peace, consent, like that changes everything. And so I think that the way that the world operates is going to change as a result. So the big takeaway with that concept, at least for me, is like that's helped me to no longer be angry at the most evil people in the world, because it's like, hey, you know what? Follow the like incentives direct behavior. And so like the reason things are so fucked is because the incentives baked into the reality in
Yeah.
which we lived in. And that's why I think about things in terms of BBAB. Like the world is now different. It's a fundamentally different reality.
Those
And
people
then
have
what
lost, Eric.
changes?
They've lost. Those people have lost. The evil people, they've
Yeah, for
lost. When
sure.
Bitcoin's
Yeah.
just, that's it. They don't know they've lost yet, but they just can't
Mm-hmm.
win. They've lost.
Totally.
It's just going to take
Yep.
time for them to realize that they've lost.
Yeah. Yeah. It's forced cooperation. Bitcoin is forcing cooperation. Like I love how Booth says, like it is imposing a new rule set on our civilization. It's the great imposition. It's like there's nothing anybody can do to co-opt this monetary protocol. So that means if you want to fucking be economically viable, you need to capitulate into that incentive force. You need to mine the coins, or you need, as they say on the streets, motherfucking come correct. Serve up something of value that somebody has Bitcoin is interested in, you know, and that's a monumentally big deal, dude. It's the fucking biggest deal ever, dude. It really is.
It really is. I love it.
We're spiraling up, but forever, man. And I really love that, and there's something deep behind that for me. It's a vibrational thing. It's crazy, like a manifestation of feedback loop.
What up, Danny? Isn't it funny with technology? Like, here we are, you're in London, I'm in California. We're sitting here chatting. I can see you. It's like, that is a fucking miracle. But like, you become accustomed to it. I find that like, if I can't load something into my phone, but trying to watch a video on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, and if it doesn't like immediately load, I find I'm like frustrated. Like,
Yeah,
oh, I gotta wait 2 minutes for this thing to download. Like, fuck, dude. Like, that's still a fucking miracle. Like, it's
it
funny.
is.
There's like an echo, or there's a lag in the you know, with the stream, and it's like, oh, what the fuck? But like, you know, gosh, it's just a miracle, the things that we can do in the world today, man.
It is amazing. And it's going to be,
Yes.
and we're only starting, you know, that's really mind blowing how all these technologies are going to converge and completely alter our lives. And also
Yeah.
what you said just earlier, you know, with law of attraction, I think everything is just going to be sped up. And
Yeah.
that you can have, you know, if you're on a dark path in terms of like what you're thinking about the world, you're going to achieve that darkness in a greater way quicker. And the same for the light,
Uh-huh.
because
Yep.
everything will just get amplified.
Totally. You know, and I think about the idea of the multiverse kind of a lot these days. And not to get too esoteric or out there, but like, I do kind of, I'm starting to think that like, we are quite literally a part of source energy. We're part of God energy that is experiencing itself. And in some sense, it's like we chose to have this life experience to experience limitation and challenge, because we're eternal, limitless beings, right? And so if you're eternal and you're limitless, you would want to experience limitation. Like, that would be something that you would want. And if we are all creators, I think about like like, everybody has their own independent reality, but then we have the reality that we're all consenting to, like we can all agree upon, right? But your reality is different than mine and everybody else's, but at the same time, there's this reality that we're all consenting to. And if the multiverse is a real thing and our vibratory state is what pulls moment by moment experiences out of the quantum field, and then you're stacking those moments together in what is perceivably a linear timeline, I think that everybody is kind of creating their own reality, and you have all these timelines that are existing at the same time. So I actually do think that it's possible for somebody who is in a fear state, who's scared of, let's say, a key extraction camp, for example, will end up going down a different timeline than somebody who's not scared of that. And for a while, you could see each other in each other's worlds, but over a long enough period of time, like, you will end up in different, like, a different planet Earth, a different reality. Somebody could end up creating for themselves in this simulation or this life experience a reality where they are in a key extraction camp. And I heard Bashar kind of talk about this, and like, you will only ever pull a experience out of the field that you vibrate, that you're a vibrational match to. And if somebody is a vibrational match to a different experience, you're protected by like he uses like the metaphor like a glass wall where you could see each other, but you're not going to attract the same experiences because you're not vibrating at the same frequency. And over time, you'll end up in completely different timelines. And he says, actually, what can happen is that the collective consciousness can shift dramatically, and that effect is what causes the Mandela. That dynamic is what can cause the Mandela effect, which I think
Right.
that that's kind of interesting. Um, yeah,
And
I don't know, but the more I think about life, and the more I'm starting to feel like this is a simulation that we have a lot more control over than what most people think.
but then do you think the Mandela effect could be amplified too? Like if that's right, that means that that would probably amplify as the world is kind of like splitting more and more.
Yeah, I mean, I would be it'll be really interesting to see what other phenomenons take place, like, moving forward over the next 20 years, where like half the population remembers something completely different than the other half
Yeah,
the
exactly,
population,
exactly.
especially like it pertains to Bitcoin. Like
Yeah,
if there's some people that like, hey, Bitcoin, there was a 6102, but then there wasn't a 6102. Like some people remember, oh, fucking Trump signing Executive Order 6103 or whatever it
yeah,
is, or
yeah, yeah,
and then other people are like, no, I don't remember. And obviously that's not the case, but people are like, isn't it interesting? We had this, this memory of, 20 years down the road. There's some people are like, yeah, I really remember like the, Executive Order 6103 being signed into effect and they were going to
yeah.
confiscate all our Bitcoin, but that didn't end up happening. It's like, that's kind of a fascinating thought, really.
That's a fascinating thought for sure.
Yeah, man.
You good?
You good? Get up there.
Boom.